The chandelier above sparkled like 1,000 diamonds, illuminating the elegant, almost intimidating restaurant. The air smelled of fresh roses and gourmet dishes, but there was an underlying tension, something in the air that made every conversation sound like a whisper. Every glance seemed like a judgment. The restaurant was filled with the kind of people who didn't just eat here. They owned the place. They owned the world. At the center of it all was Ramiro Valdez, a man whose name was known across the city as a symbol of wealth and ruthlessness. His suit was dark, his tie perfectly tied, but it was the coldness in his eyes that made people afraid to even look at him. Seated at his table, surrounded by his loyal henchmen, he had the world at his feet. Or so he thought. Across the room, a new waitress, Laura, stepped in. It had only been her 3rd week at the job, but today she was about to face something far beyond anything she had ever imagined. As she adjusted her apron, she felt her stomach churn. There was a buzz in the air, a sense of foreboding, and all of it seemed to focus on one man. She had heard the stories about Ramiro Valdez. People spoke of his cruelty, how he humiliated his employees and anyone who dared defy him. But Laura, eager to keep her job, was determined not to let it shake her. But today, the day she had feared, had come. Laura approached the table, her steps measured but her heart racing. As she drew closer, she could feel the eyes of Ramiro and his companions fall on her. The air seemed to freeze, as if the room held its breath. Finally, "Someone who dares to look me in the eye," Ramiro said loudly, his voice dripping with mockery. He stared at Laura, his smile twisted, but she didn't flinch. "Good evening, sir. Here is your special cut, as requested," Laura said, her tone as professional as she could muster, but inside she was trembling. Ramiro looked her up and down, sneering. "It's not, sir," he said slowly, his voice rising in a mocking tone. "It's Don Ramiro." "You'll learn to show respect." The men around him laughed as if this were some kind of performance. The power in the room shifted toward Ramiro, and Laura felt her cheeks flush with embarrassment, but she refused to show weakness. She nodded slightly and corrected herself. "Of course, Don Ramiro." As the evening progressed, Laura's anxiety grew. Every time she approached the table, Ramiro made a show of correcting her, belittling her with every word. He criticized the way she held the plates, mocked her movements, and even questioned her intelligence in front of his guests. The tension in the room was palpable. The moment came when she placed a dish on the table and Ramiro, with a dismissive wave of his hand, knocked it over, spilling food all over the pristine white tablecloth. "Faster, woman! Do you think I have time for this nonsense?" Ramiro barked, his voice booming across the restaurant. The laughter of his companions echoed in her ears. Laura took a deep breath. She could feel the weight of everyone's gaze on her, but she refused to break. "I'm sorry, Don Ramiro. I'll clean it up immediately." She reached for the napkin to clean the mess, but his next words made her stop in her tracks. "You're a disappointment. If you don't know how to serve, maybe you don't belong here," he spat, his eyes cold with disdain. His laughter rang through the air, and his men followed suit. Her hands shook as she picked up the spilled plate. She wanted to shout, to tell him that he wasn't the king of the world, but something in her told her that she had to remain professional. For now. Later that evening, the moment of truth arrived. As Laura placed another dish in front of Ramiro, he didn't hesitate to humiliate her once again. He looked at her, his eyes narrowing in that way that sent a chill down her spine. "Do you even know what you're doing, or are you just pretending to be busy?" Ramiro asked, his voice low but filled with venom. "I bet you're one of those people who'll never get anywhere." Just another servant. The words stung, but something inside Laura snapped. She stood tall and locked eyes with him, her voice firm. "I am doing my job to the best of my ability, Don Ramiro. But what you fail to understand is that respect isn't something you can demand. It's earned. For the first time, a silence fell over the table. The guests stopped their conversation, the laughter faded, and Ramiro's companions shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "You think you can talk to me like that?" Ramiro sneered, standing up and towering over her. His hand reached for the napkin, but Laura wasn't done. She took a deep breath and looked directly into his eyes. "I'm not afraid of you. I'm just here to do my job, and I'll treat you with the respect you deserve, but I won't let you belittle me or anyone else." Ramiro's face turned bright red with anger. Without warning, he grabbed his wine glass and slammed it down on the table, causing the wine to splash out. "You'll regret this, little girl," he snarled, his voice vibrating with fury. The room grew tense, the silence deafening. The tension was so thick that it seemed like time had stopped. But in that moment, Laura knew she couldn't back down. Without another word, she lifted the plate she was holding and in one swift motion let the food slide right onto Ramiro's lap. The steak and potatoes fell, splattering across his suit. The room went still. Ramiro froze, his expression one of shock, then fury. For a long moment, no one moved. Then Laura spoke calmly, her voice clear and unshaken. "You wanted respect? Here's what I think of your arrogance." She turned to face the stunned onlookers. "True respect isn't earned by belittling others. It's earned by standing up for what's right." Ramiro stood up, shaking with rage. His companions, usually so loyal to him, now looked at him with hesitation. The power dynamic had shifted. The billionaire, who had been the master of this space, now looked small, pathetic. "You're done for," Ramiro muttered through clenched teeth. But Laura wasn't done yet. "No," she said firmly. "You're done. Not because of me, but because people like you will always fall. You've shown no respect for anyone, and now the world knows what kind of man you really are." The restaurant owner, who had been watching in silence from the back, finally stepped forward. "That's enough, Ramiro. I've had enough of you." His voice rang with authority. "Laura, you're not fired. You've earned my respect." The room erupted in applause. People from other tables stood clapping, some even wiping tears from their eyes. They had witnessed something remarkable, a moment of dignity in the face of tyranny. Ramiro, crushed by the realization that his power had crumbled, slowly walked out of the restaurant, his head low. As the door closed behind him, the mood in the restaurant shifted. The air felt lighter. Laura stood still, her chest heaving with emotion, but her eyes held something new: pride. She had faced the storm, and it had not broken her. The restaurant owner called her over. "From now on, you'll be in charge of the front. You've shown more bravery and dignity than anyone else here, and we all owe you our respect." Laura smiled softly. "I didn't do it for respect, but because it was the right thing to do." Her actions, in that moment, not only changed the course of her own life, but also ignited a spark in everyone around her. It reminded them all that true strength comes not from power, but from the courage to stand up for what's right. And for the first time, people looked at Ramiro Valdez and saw not a towering figure of power, but a small, lonely man who had been exposed for the coward he truly was.